All right, so before this we learned arithmetic sequence. So that's one pattern. And we learned that that pattern was linear. You need to all listen. Today we're going to learn about recursive patterns. Recursive patterns are a little bit more difficult than arithmetic sequences. Sometimes they're easier, sometimes more often they're a little bit more difficult. Oops, that pen's out of juice. All right, so let's define what is a recursive pattern. A recursive pattern just means that you will list the first term or the first few terms and then describe how to determine the remaining terms from the terms already given. Essentially, with recursive patterns, we will always use the previous term in the pattern to find the next term. Always use the previous term to find the next term. That's essentially the gist of the whole thing. It looks a little bit more complicated than that at first, but you'll start to see there is a pattern to recursive patterns. Sometimes it's an arithmetic pattern, sometimes it's not. More often it's not. So the first one that we're going to look at is a little different than most recursives that you're going to be given. And the very first one that I'm giving you, we're going to look at the algebra behind it. And then you'll have to do less and less algebra because you're going to start to see, oh, okay, I understand how this works. So for the first example, the directions are going to read, find the first 5. Terms of the sequence defined by. They're not necessarily going to tell you this is a recursive pattern. By what they give you will tell you it's recursive. And this is how you'll know. For instance, this is what I'm going to give you. A sub 1 is equal to 5. Semicolon. So I always have to give you at least one term. Then I have to give you the pattern. So then the pattern is defined as a sub n plus 1 equals, and this n plus 1 refers to if a sub 1, if 1 is n, what's the next term after a sub 1? A sub 2. And wouldn't we get a sub 2 by saying a sub 1 plus 1? Mm-hmm. So this is just referring to the next term in the sequence. However, we will use the previous term, just like I did. I used a sub 1 in there to get to that next term. So in this case, a sub n plus 1 is equal to 2 times a sub n minus 3. So how does this work? So here's our solution. And we're going to write a lot, mostly because you'll go back. If we don't write it out now, when you go home, you're going to forget how did we do that and why. And if you don't have it written out in your notes, you're not going to remember why. So for the first one, we're going to write everything out. And move this up. So you will 100% of the time start with the given. So a sub 1 is equal to 5. Where did I get that? It was given above. This is where it is imperative that you have 2 colors. Perhaps 3, because I'm going to use 3 colors. If you don't, when you go back to look at your notes, you're not going to see what we did. And you need to see it with color. Is everybody ready? I don't care what color it is. If you're using pencil with a red pen, you know, whatever it might be, you need a second color. Okay. So to get the next, we need the first 5 terms. So the next term in the sequence after a sub 1 is a sub what? A sub 2. To get a sub 2, we're going to use the previous term. Wouldn't you agree that to get 2, I can use a sub 1, which is my previous term, right? Because this is a plus 1, plus 1. My previous term would be a sub 1 plus 1. Doesn't that give me 2? Okay. So, according to the pattern up here, I'm going to take 2 times a sub, what's a sub n? Just n, not n plus 1. Because this is n plus 1, right? What's just n? 1, our previous term. Isn't a sub n a sub 1? Because look up here, a sub n is here plus 1. Isn't this a sub n right here? Because there's your n. So that means that a sub n is 1. And then we also have in the pattern minus 3. So what the pattern is telling us is take 2 times the previous term, that's a sub 1 is the previous term to a sub 2, and then subtract 3. So I get 2 times, what's the value of the previous term? What's the value of a sub 1? 5. And then minus 3. So this 5 came from there. Do you see how I'm using the previous term in my sequence to get my new term? What's 2 times 5? 10 minus 3? 7. So a sub 2, this is a sub 1, so I'm going to put a box around it. So there's my first term. This is my second term, right? Now we have to find the third term. So isn't a sub 3 the next term in the sequence? So I'm going to move this up now. You can see it a little bit better. Okay. To get a sub what plus 1 is 3. What goes here? Bless you. What goes here? Wouldn't you say that 2 plus 1 is 3? Agreed? So doesn't 2 go there? So that means that isn't a sub n now a sub 2? Because remember, in this up here, we want a sub n. Isn't this a sub n is a sub 2? What's our previous term? A sub 2, right? I want that previous term in here. So we end up having 2 times a sub 2 minus 3 equals. What's the value of the second term? 7, right. So do you see how now I'm using the previous term in this one? So I've got 2 times 7. The 7 came from the previous one. Then minus 3. After we find the value of this, we're going to stop and ponder it for a minute. What's 2 times 7? 14. What's 14 minus 3? 11. So let's just stop for just a minute. Just look at where we did the math. So here we have this one, right? We didn't do any math there. Here we have this one, and here we have this one. Didn't we put the 5, and then this models this equation, doesn't it? Didn't we put the 5 in for a sub n, the previous term? So if I'm finding a sub 2, I took the previous term a sub 1, which was 5, and I put it in the formula, right? 2 times 5, and I minus 3, I got 7. Then I did the same formula again, but this time I put 7 in. So what do you think is going to happen the next time? I'm going to put 11 in. And then the next time I'll put whatever that value is in. But we're going to continue to write it out. For the next problem, we won't write it out so much anymore. But then a sub, what's my next term? 4. What does that equal to? A sub, yeah, so in order to get 4, I have to do the previous term of 3 plus 1 equals. So that means what I'm working with is a sub 3, the previous term. So I've got 2 times a sub 3, right? Because these should be the same, minus 3 equals. Now plug in your values. What goes in there? What's a sub 3? 11. So the 11 goes in here, and we got it from here. So you're thinking at this time, well, why do I have to write all that down now, right? Because you get it now. But remember, you're going to go home and forget just how did I do that? And you want to see the whole thing there so you can kind of see what we did. And so what's 2 times 11? 22 minus 3? 19. And then the last one is a sub what? So a sub 5 equals a sub what? The previous term is 4, right? Plus 1 equals 2 times a sub what? 4, the previous term, right? Minus 3. Always using the previous term. So here's what we're really doing. What goes in for the blank? 19. Whoops, I guess I should have done that in pink. What is 2 times 19? 38 minus 3? 35. Now, because this is a pattern, there will be a pattern to the recursive pattern itself. Look at the numbers. It's a pattern that's increasing, isn't it? What's the difference between 5 and 7? 2. Between 7 and 11? 4. Between 11 and 19? No. 8. So we've got 2, 4, 8. What's the difference between 19 and 25? Or 35?
16.
16. 2, 4, 8, 16. What's the next difference going to be? 32. So if I'd only given you these numbers, wouldn't you start to see what the pattern is? And then, so each time you multiply the difference by 2 and add that in, right? So there is a pattern to it. Okay, the difference here is 2, right? Then the difference here is 4. Isn't 2 times 2 4? Right? And the difference here is 8, and isn't 4 times 2 8? And the difference here is 16. 8 times 2 is 16. So there is a pattern that we keep taking the difference and multiplying it by 2 and adding that in. So then the next difference must be 32. So I'll bet you what's 35 plus 32? 67 would be the next number. And if we ran it through and did all this, well, what's 2 times 35? 70 minus 3. 67. Doesn't work. So there is a way to check your answers. That's my point. All right, so normally you're not going to get a plus, but I wanted you to understand how to do it with a plus. This is what you're normally going to get. So next problem. We're not going to write so much on the next problem. So example 2. You can see the directions are fairly similar. Find the first 5 terms. Of the sequence defined by this time I'm going to use different things than A sub n. I'm going to use different letters. Just so that it doesn't throw you off if you see it. So you ready? This time I'm going to give you T sub 1, so I'm still giving you what term in the sequence?
T sub 1.
The first term in the sequence, right? So T sub 1 has a value of 2, semicolon. Sometimes they're going to stack these vertically or horizontally. I'm just saving space by doing it horizontally. And then the pattern itself is T sub n equals, this time we don't see T sub n plus 1, right? We just see T sub n. And then within the pattern you see T sub n minus 1 plus 5. If T sub n were 1 and n is 1, what's 1 minus 1? 0. What is T sub 0 to T sub 1? Is it the next term or the previous term? So this refers specifically to the previous term in the sequence instead of the next one. So this one we find a little differently. Shouldn't these two numbers here be the same if the n's are the same? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, so watch what I do. So here's our solution. What do we start with? I have to find the first 5 terms. What do I start with? T sub 1 equals 2. So you always start with your given. We will always use the previous term to find the next term. What's the next term in my sequence? T sub 2. Well, hang on. So T sub 2. So now this is T sub 2, right? This is the 2 for that end there, correct? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it equal T sub what minus 1? 2. These are the same, aren't they? Oh. So if this is 2, then this one here is 2. Because these are the same, right? Minus 1. Whatever you do, don't shut down on me mentally. Stay with me. Okay? We'll get through it. What's 2 minus 1? 1. So isn't this really T sub 1? Isn't this really the previous term? But don't forget, we have to put a plus 5 here. This is the pattern, right? All I did was take this and I followed it exactly. Then, just for our purposes, and then after this, you'll see what the pattern is and you'll quit having to write it. 2 minus 1 is T sub 1 plus 5. What is the value of T sub 1? 2. Here's T sub 1, right? Didn't I say we're always going to use the previous term in the next sequence? Mm-hmm. So this 2 went here. What's 2 plus 5? 7. Whoa. Again, all we did was take the previous term and plug it in for this, right? So then let's do one more and I'll let you shortcut it. T sub what is the next term? T sub 3. So that's equal to T sub what minus 1? Look at your pattern here. What do you know about these two? Aren't these the same ends? So what are these? 3, right? This is also 3. Plus 5. What's T sub 3 minus 1? T sub 2. So I'm really putting the value of T sub 2 here plus 5. What's the value of T sub 2? 7 plus 5. So that 7 came from the previous term, didn't it? Yeah. What's 7 plus 5? 12. Now I don't have to write so much. You can start to see the pattern, right? I'm just taking the previous term and putting it in here, take the next term, put it in here. Won't I put 12 in plus 5? And then take the next one plus 5 and the next one plus 5, right? So now, once you have that pattern going, T sub 4 is equal to t sub 3, right? The previous term plus 5. What's t sub 3?
17.
Nope, t sub 3.
Oh,
12. So I'm putting a 12 in here plus 5. That's our 17, right? Only because of your notes are we writing this. So you find the last one, t sub 5. You find the last one. Share it with those around you. Share it with those around you. Talk, talk, talk.
We got torn my hinge.
Oh, geez, no.
I got volleyball last night. I'm somehow supposed to be playing. But
See, that's what happened the last time. You're going to be a leg cast, full body leg cast.
no, what happened is,
And then you won't be able to write because your leg's in a cast.
yeah. So then I dove and it like dragged me back.
Hang tight. All right, so what'd you get?
22.
What'd you get? Everybody, what'd you get?
22.
Did everybody get 22?
Yeah.
Okay. So you should have taken t sub 4 plus 5, right? And t sub 4 is 17 plus 5, I agree, is 22. Now look, let's check our answers and see if there's a pattern that we can see. We have an increasing pattern, right? What's the difference between 2 and 7? 5. The difference between 7 and 12? 5. 12 and 17? 5. And then this should be 5, is it? Yes. Isn't this recursive sequence also arithmetic? There is a common difference, right? So sometimes your recursive sequences are arithmetic, okay? However, arithmetic sequences are not always recursive. All right, last one. Last one's a little bit more difficult, but you get the idea that we're always using the previous term in the sequence, correct? Okay, so let's look at the last one. And then I'll do a few of your homework problems with you.
Yay!
Just a couple. I know. So example 3. Again, find the first 5 terms of the sequence defined by. Now this one is going to be exactly like example number 2, but a little bit more difficult. I probably won't test you on a question like this one because it's slightly more tricky because there's 2 different things we're plugging in here. All right, this time I'm giving you a sub 1 is equal to 9, semicolon. A sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1. So I'm taking the previous term here, right? Plus, parentheses, 5 times n, that means that these n's here are the same, right? And all these n's here are the same, right? So 5n minus 3. So I'm having to plug into this equation here, a sub n, the previous term goes here, and then the value of the, or not the value, the sequence of that term goes here, of the current term. So let's look at our solution. So our solution is, and again, I'm only going to write out the first couple. And then we'll use the pattern from there. So our solution, what do we start with?
A sub 1 equals
Don't we start with a given, right? So a sub 1 is equal to 9. That's given. So to get a sub, what's the next term? 2. Okay, that equals, so I'm using this right here. So here's my 2 here. The next one is a sub something minus 1. What goes here? These are the same. All the n's are the same, right? So what goes here? 2, doesn't it? They're all the same, right? So 2 plus parentheses 5 times, what's my value for n going to be if all the n's are the same? All the n's are the same. What do I put here? 2 minus 3. So really what I have here is a sub what? What's this a value of? 2 minus 1? 1. Isn't that the previous term? Right? Plus 5 times, and I'm still going to put this 2 in pink because we're subbing that in, minus 3. Where did I get which one? This 2. So remember I've got 3 n's in the formula that they gave me, right? Aren't all the n's, shouldn't all the n's be the same? See how I have 2, 2, and 2? No. My next term after 1 is 2, right? Stop talking. So then all 3 of these n's have to be the same because that's where all the n's are. Where I have the pink 2's, aren't they all n's? Okay. Question?
Why would you sub in 9?
I will. I'm going to. You're right. I'm going to.
Oh,
But I wanted you to understand that 2 minus 1 is 1. That's my a sub 1. So you're right. I'm going to sub in here all the time and here all the time. These numbers are different though, aren't they? This is your previous term always. Isn't this your current place in the sequence? Your nth term, right? So these will always be the same, but this will be your previous term.
Okay.
So here's our answer. What's a sub 1? The value, 9 plus 5 times, we're still getting the 2, that didn't change, minus 3. So I want you to put some arrows where you got these things. So the 9 went there, right? And this 2 from here went there. Now that we got rid of everything, what is 5 times 2? 10. What's 10 minus 3? What's 7 plus 9? 16. So our first term is 9, our second term is 16, right? Okay, let's look at the next one. A sub what is the next one? 3. So if you want to, you can start to go to this one if you want to. What did we do in this one? What did we put here? The previous term, right? So just for your note purposes, we put a sub 2 here, right? A sub 2 here plus 5 times what goes here?
3.
Yep, these have to be the same. But this is the previous, and then minus 3. So that's what makes it difficult, is we're plugging in 2 different things. We kind of up the ante a little bit. So to get our answer, a sub 2 is what? So we take our 16, there's our previous term, plus 5 times, the 3 doesn't change, minus 3, equals. So figure it out. What's 5 times 3? 15. What's 15 minus 3? 12. What's 12 and 16? 28. So what I would like you to do is you try and find a sub 4 and a sub 5. All you're going to do is put in the previous term here, so the 28 goes down here, right? And then what's going to go here this time for a sub 4? What's going to go here? Notice how these are the same? So what's going to go here for the next one? 4, right? So you try it. You try it. When you get the answers, share them with those around you. So share with those around you. What'd you get? You should see a pattern to your answers as well.
But I got the other ones.
You should recognize the numbers, the difference in the numbers. So what do we get for a sub 4? Does everybody agree? If not, this is what we did. Alright, so we take the previous term but the same nth term, right? So the 4 goes here and a sub 3, which is 28, goes there, right? So the previous term goes there, 28 from here. That same number goes there, 4. So what's 5 times 4? 20 minus 3. So that's 17 plus 28 is your 45. Okay? Then, what'd you get for a sub 5? 67 is correct. Again, I took the previous term here, right, 45, and then the same number here went here, 5. So this time I'm doing 5 times 5. So doesn't this number keep increasing? It went from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So there's a pattern, 2 different patterns going on here. This number here keeps increasing by 1, and then this number is always the previous number. So this one's harder because there's 2 different patterns going on. The pattern in the sequence is this. What's the difference between 9 and 16? 7. What was this value here? This value here was 7, right? What's the difference between these 2 numbers? No. 12. 12. What's this value here? 12. What's the difference between these 2 numbers? 17. Come on, guys, 17. What's the value here? 17. What's the difference between these 2? 22. Miriam's got it. This value here should be 22. Okay? So there was a slight thing there. So then what I want to do with you is a couple of your homework problems. Just so it's clear. 2. All right, so here's what we're looking at. Listen carefully, please. That means you're done talking. Finish it right now. Doesn't mean you continue the conversation, you cut it off. All right, so let's look at questions 1 through 6. You notice that they're giving you a sub 0, right? A sub 0 is the term before the first term. It doesn't matter where they start you. They could have started you at a sub 5 or a sub 15. It doesn't matter where they start you. We're always taking the previous term and putting it into the sequence to get the next term, right? Isn't that all we did? Okay. So don't let that bother you. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Okay. So we are going to work on number 1. So if they gave me this, right? This is what they gave me. Don't I start with that?
Yeah.
And I have to find the first 3 terms, right? So I'm going to start with a sub 0. Oops. So a sub 0 is equal to, oh sorry, that's 0, is equal to 29. That was given, right? Then to get the next term in the sequence, which is a sub what? 1. This says, if it's a sub 1, it says take the previous term and subtract 7. Isn't that all it's saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the previous term to a sub 1? 29. A sub 0, which is 29. So won't I just take 29 minus 7 equals 22? Then how do you find a sub 2? What do I put here?
You get 22 minus...
The previous term is 22, right? Minus 7 equals, what's that? 15. This happens to be an arithmetic sequence because I'm just subtracting 7 each time, right? And all I did was take the previous term and put it in here. Previous term, put it in here. The next one would be 15 minus 7, right? Which would be 8. But they only asked for the first 3. Then I'm not going to have you do it right now, but look at this one. Doesn't this say take the previous term, multiply it by 3, and add 3?
Yes.
So if I were you, I would add in here parentheses, here and here, because that means take the previous term, so you'd start with -6, right? Take -6, multiply it by 3, and add 3. Look at number 3. This says, because a sub n minus 1 is the previous term, so take the previous term, square it, and then subtract 25. What's the previous term?
6.
If we're finding a sub 1, it would be a sub 0, which is 6. So take 6, what's 6 times 6? 36 minus 25. 11. So we'd go from 6 to 11. So, I mean, that's all they're asking you to do. Take the previous term. Are we writing very much anymore? No. Okay, so my whole point to your notes was for you to understand, what are we really doing? We're really taking that previous term, and we're taking some very confusing looking information, and we're really simplifying it quite a bit. And saying, just take the previous term, put it into the pattern, and do the work. Okay? Then, look at 7, 8, and 9. They're a little scarier because they said, oh, find the 12th term, the 35th term, and the 89th term. But it's not like the arithmetic sequence where we can plug it into this formula and come out with a number. But notice what I gave you. If you're finding the 12th term, what did I give you? The 9th term. I didn't give you the first term, right? And the 35th term, what did I give you? The 33rd term. And for the 89th term, what did I give you? 86th term. So I've given you a term that's close to the term that you need, right? So this is your starting point. So look at 12. We're going to start with what they gave us. A sub 9 is equal to 11. That's our starting point, right? So then when I go to find a sub, what's the next number in the sequence? 10. All this says is take, and remember this is 4 times, so this should be multiplication there, 4 times the previous term plus 5. So we have 4 times the previous term plus 5. What's the previous term? 11. So the 11 goes in here, doesn't it? What is 4 times 11? What is 44 plus 5? 49. That's still not what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for the 12th term. So a sub 11 is the next one, right? So don't I take the same pattern, right? But what do I put here? 49. You got it now. And that came from taking the 49 and putting it there. What is 49 times 4?
196.
Wait. Oh.
Multiply 49 and 4, you do get 196 plus 5. What do you get? 201. Is that what I'm looking for? No. So then, but the next term is what I'm looking for, right? So then a sub 12 is equal to 4 times something plus 5. What's the something?
201.
The 201. See, it's not so hard, is it? So what is 4 times 201? 804 plus 5. Whoops. 809, right? Now I blocked that out because that's what I'm looking for. 809. So don't let the last 3 freak you out. You just have a different starting point. Okay? Then